All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. I know it's a busy time for everybody. So what I'd like to do is we're going to start with introductions of the people on the panel, and then we're going to have a short presentation by Stefan giving kind of an overview, and then we'll have some comments on that. We'd like to have an interaction, so please feel free to ask questions. Stefan has advised me that his slides will be available. You'll have to contact him by email. They want to track them. And you can take care of that. He'll have his email address so you can reach out to him from that point of view. Okay? All right, so as I'm standing here, I must be the one moderating and starting. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Bruno. I am a consultant. I come from the CMO side of the business, and I've been doing this for about 20-some years now. And I work with a lot of the small pharmaceutical companies, and I'm responsible for APIs and dosage. So this topic, to me, is extremely important, because that's how I get paid. So, from that perspective, I think it's an interesting one. I think we'll get a lot out of it today. So, Paul, would you?
Morning. I'm Paul Quigley, so I'm Director of Process Chemistry. I'm a technical guy, basically. I help with scale-up. I work for Pharmaron in the UK. I've been in the industry CDMO space for over 30 years. I know a lot of people. I've been around a lot of CDMOs. And I've been at ChemOutsourcing for many years, and I've seen it evolve, and that's me. Okay, I'll pass on to my colleague.
Hi, my name is Donald Ho, and I'm sort of a hybrid. I spent 21 years in Big Pharma at Schering-Plough and Merck, and I moved over to the CDMO side. Also worked at Chirex, which became Rodeo Pharma Solutions, where Paul and I were also colleagues. And also I went to China in 2010 to join ChemPartner China Gateway. Recently retired in 2022, I think it was, and now I'm a part-time consultant, so can bring expertise from both sides of the business, if you will.
Hello, everyone. I'm Deborah Miner, President and founder of Drug Discovery Alliances. My business has been in business for 20 years and offers and provides the best-in-class R&D services to help drive pharmaceutical development to commercialization. And having said that, most of the clients that I work with are the biotech and startup companies. And so this funding matter and question that's going around, companies going to be hurting for money, is definitely near and dear to our hearts as well. So look forward to the interactive discussion.
Hello, I'm Molly Gleizes. I started my career in bioinformatics and genomics, and my background is biochemistry, cell and molecular biology, and I was grateful to witness the bubble of 2000s and fall of that as an entrepreneur in that space, and .com, and moved on to analytical chemistry for a while, and then moved into the CDMO space, and I've worked for 15 years or so after the 10 years prior as CDMOs, representing for business development with an MBA. And I've seen a lot of different things in different global aspects and changes, and I'm here to offer what I've seen in the information, the experience, because it's going to be changing for the future as well, and happy to answer questions afterwards. It's an interesting time.
So I'm the odd one out here. I'm the Wall Street guy, token Wall Street person, although I will tell you I do have a PhD in chemistry and worked in the pharmaceutical business at Abbott Laboratories many years ago. I've been on Wall Street for 30 years. I'm currently an investment banker and have been for the last 8 years. Prior to that, I was an investor for many years. We are going to open up with a few slides here just to set the stage, I think, for the presentation and the panel meeting here. If we could jump to slide 3. Last year...
you want me to run them?
Oh, yeah. Let's get the IT folks up. Last year, I made a few comments. The year before, somebody called me Debbie Downer when I was talking about the market. Last year, luckily, I had a few constructive things to say about the market, and I've got even more constructive things to say about the market. Earlier this year, we told a lot of our clients in a newsletter, which most people laughed at me, but I said we'd bottomed in the biotech market when we said that in February, actually. And I think we're starting to see signs that this is definitely the case. We're very optimistic now. Whereas, as I said last year at the same time, I wasn't so optimistic. We're seeing a few things on the positive and negative side, obviously, that are out there. FDA is a mess, but we're starting to get clarity at the FDA, which is a good thing. What I think is very telling at this point also is that market, what we call market responsiveness, is back again. If a company has good data, the last few years, sent the stock down. Just what happened, or the valuation went straight down. Now, good data is sending stocks up, and actually we're seeing a lot of what we like to see as a buyout in certain areas, that is. So if you're in the obesity space, if you're in the CNS space, we're seeing lots of buyouts actually at this point. And from that standpoint, pharma is starting to, and big biotech are starting to acquire again, which is relatively important. Capital is flowing despite the bad market. We're seeing inflows into many funds, and many new funds are starting, which is very good. Also, buy-side engagement is really picking up. About 6 months ago, I would go out with companies, I'd want to get meetings, and people would just say, yeah, not taking meetings, not interested. Now I can get a meeting for anybody. I can fill schedules like crazy. Very good sign. It's what I like to say is an early indicator of what we're going to see for the rest of the year and next year. And then the other kinds of things we're seeing that are subsiding some of the market headwinds for a long time, and I showed a slide last year, very similar this year, is that the number one determinant of the biotech performance, does anybody want to take a guess what it is? It's the 10-year. It's interest rates. Because, of course, all biotechs rely on interest rates, go figure. But there's an inverse proportion. It's been very tight correlation. That's breaking, which is a good news for us. So at this point, people are looking at data. They're looking at other things. That's breaking apart as well. So we're also seeing what, for those of us in the business that actually do follow technical indicators, the market is showing higher lows and higher highs. That's a good thing. So going forward, we really expect to see a lot of that. If we could, actually I have control, right? These slides will be available, don't worry. I'm just going to go through a few of them very quickly. Financings, we did see a little bit of a jump last year in financings, mostly on the big cap side, the larger market caps. If you're a small market cap company, most of them are still in a world of hurt. We've seen some turnarounds. In the last year, I've done 2 deals where I've raised more than 2x the market cap of companies, in one case 10x the market cap of a company. We're seeing other deals like that from other banks as well. That's a good thing for companies that are $10, $20 million market caps, able to raise 185, 200 million. So from that standpoint, we're actually rebirthing companies in many ways. Companies that have been left for dead are now having a second life or a third life, depending on how we look at it. The bottom line is, though, year to date, we're actually looking a little bit better than we were in the depth of the market. Maybe not on the same trajectory as last year, but I'm going to tell you by the end of this year, I think we will be. So I think things are definitely picking up. So very quickly go through as well, just the annual follow-on numbers. We're seeing a dead part of the start of the year. There's a big acceleration in the second quarter. So we're seeing the numbers come up very rapidly, which is a big and what I would say very positive sign. Money is flowing.
Can I ask where that money
Sure.
is flowing into in terms of modality and types?
Funny you ask, because I have slides on that. So we can actually go into that. Let me just figure out where it is. If you give me a second. Deal type, this is by market cap. This is deal sizes.
Sorry, Jim, you did say to be interactive.
Yeah, no, this is all good. Interrupt. It's all good. I do want to make this point first, is that we're seeing a lot of these types of deals now, whereas before you had to have a catalyst. You had to have data. Otherwise, you didn't raise money. Now we're seeing people just raising money. So that's a big important thing. And let's see if we have it here.
I've read the opposite,
Maybe
so I like that exciting.
All right. Deal flow. So just in terms of it, oncology is still taking the lion's share, which is interesting because as I go out and I talk to investors, investors are tired of oncology right now. They're very interested in obesity, although they're getting very tired of metabolic and obesity now too. So fickle investors, just sort of how we have to deal with it. We are seeing investment in other areas as well. CNS is a big area right now as well that's following on. Obviously, obesity is taking a lot of the money as well. So when I send out the slides, by the way, they're going to be a little bit clearer. So we'll have better graphics here. And these were from a survey that we finished up very recently. We haven't finished the whole thing yet. Probably about the next week, I'll have all the graphics fixed. So, yes.
You mentioned that you'll be sending out the slides. Where would it be possible to download it?
At the end of the talk, we'll get there. Not a problem. I'll keep going very quickly. Couple things I do want to mention is just in terms of the headwinds, the IRA at this point. Most favored nation seems to be what people are talking about now, no longer IRA. From that standpoint, for smaller biotechs, IRA is a big, important thing for pharma. It's affecting the way that they're in licensing. It's affecting the way that they're characterizing their whole portfolios. But for a biotech company, if you're on that list of the 20 or 30 drugs, you've hit a grand slam home run. You've sold. You're never working again. We have a term for that in the business, which I'm not going to repeat because it is not a pleasant word. But at any rate, from that standpoint, on the VC side, by the way, VCs are now focusing. For a while, they were going very early stage because they didn't want their companies going public. They're moving back to late stage. This is another signal that VCs are seeing a positive market environment as well coming in the public. Okay? And just very quickly, here's who's investing in biotech. The names of the investors and what they've put in on the private side. A lot of these are very mirrored on the public side as well. So, as I said, people are putting capital to work. OrbiMed has raised new money. RA Capital's raised new money. Forbion has raised a lot of new money. European, if you don't know them, you should. These guys stayed out of the frenzy that was COVID. They didn't lose all the money. They've made money since investing in less expensive stocks. Done very well. So a lot of these folks have done extremely well. And then for those of you that care, I have a lot of statistics on the valuations for various private companies and what they've done. I don't want to go through the whole thing anymore, but what I will do is put up my QR code here. This is how you're going to text me, and I will send you back the link to get
And you
the
will
slides
keep that up so at the end?
the entire time.
Thank you.
So I've taken up probably too much time, but just a view from the street is, as I said, things are definitely on a positive trend. Still very volatile. We're not out of the woods, but there's hope, which is very important.
Can I ask one more question?
Ask all you want.
In terms of the macro environment economically, I always wonder if there's a correlation between M&A activity with big pharma versus for recession or hard times to come. So M&A is up, and even though stock market is up, middle America is still struggling, and that would relate to startups and so on.
So one of the couple things to think about is when we're in a recession, healthcare does take a little bit of a hit, but much less than other sectors. That's the one thing. Pharma seems to be completely independent, and frequently investors seem to be independent. The biotech market, yes, does it go down during recession? Yes, but the thing is this, when interest rates go down, which tends to happen post-recession, biotech goes up, period. And the reason why is it's all a cost of capital issue, where if I'm sitting at a VC, and what we saw with a lot of the VCs, typically about a year ago, 2 years ago, interest rates were high. They just said, why am I going to take any risk? I'm going to put my money in the bank. And that's exactly what they did. Many investors did that as well. Now, I'm in some hedge funds. I used to run a hedge fund. People didn't pay me to put my money in a CD. So you can do that for a while, but after a year or two, you have to start investing. And that's what we're in right now, is that phase where people are sort of getting their arms twisted by the limiteds. Because as a limited, somebody with money in a hedge fund, I can just take it out and stick it and not pay the 2.5% fee to the hedge fund and the upside fee as well. So from that standpoint, we're getting into that. That's another thing that's driving investment right now as well.
Thank you.
Gotcha. Good. We have a whole panel here, lot smarter than I, and people actually in the industry. So let me
We're
turn it
finished
back
now.
over.
Let me, back to some of your points, if you will. So because I deal with the smaller companies, a few things that, if you're in a phase one opportunity, it's hard to get money. So I've got 2 or 3 drugs right now, they're being held up because it's a lack of funds. The problem with that, too, it's hurting the CMOs because obviously, if we're not making drugs for testing, then they're not making drugs there. The other thing I find for the smaller companies is they're reorganizing how they're buying. They may buy smaller amounts. They're taking their buys out to longer periods of time, which also affects the CMOs and that type. It makes it a little bit difficult for them to manufacture. And I think a lot of the small investors, the small biotech companies, they don't recognize the fact, and we had this conversation in the hall, making 10 kilos is not really that much more expensive than making 2 kilos. But you're always going to need more API, you're going to need more dosage and all of that kind of thing to go forward. And I would say my last point to your comment about the data, I found that no matter what you say, nobody ever gives money to a company because they made API or dosage. They make it because they have clinical data, and that clinical data will drive it. The problem with clinical data is you need API and dosage to do it. So it's kind of that proverbial, cycle. If we don't do our job, they don't do their job, you don't do your job, and we don't get drugs made. So just, kind of as an add-on. So the rest of my panel.
So from a Pharmaron perspective, it's really interesting. We've been going for many years. We have a vast number of opportunities in phase one, and we deal with everything from large pharma clients to mid-range to small biotechs. And the landscape is very different. So from my opinion, big pharma, they've got plenty of powder. They have the ability to license out. They have the need, because in many cases there is a portfolio deficit coming forward. So there is a need to continually refresh that. Secondly, big pharma are looking forward 5-10 years in terms of refreshing their supplier base. They're looking strategically. So they're looking to bring stuff in. So they have the ability to bring funding in. What drives big pharma, it can be very different to the mid-range and small-scale biotech. Small-scale biotechs, absolutely. These guys, just to Jim's point, they want to get it over the line, so they want to get to a key clinical endpoint. So the data and the science is at least as important, if not more important, than the actual material that goes into clinical trial. So having it on terms of the science, the data, the offering is incredibly important. The other thing to say, and our experience with biotechs, is yes, they want to get it over the line, but sometimes they will out-license at particular points, mainly because they may not have the skill sets to go raise and really bring to the next level a clinical program. These guys may be really good and they've got it to that point, and then they understand what they can do and understand what they can't do. And some of these guys are in 2 different opinions. I'm really optimistic. I share Stefan's. We've been through this loads of times. Years ago, we had the post-COVID bubble. We've had numerous recessions. It goes up, it goes down. It comes back, and we just need to be ready for all of that as it does. I'll pass over to my colleagues. Yeah.
So I'm going to bring a slightly different perspective. But first, I want to amplify one of Jim's points. I talk with a lot of other consultants, and they tell me the same thing that Jim had espoused, which is basically the slowdown in people actually getting consultants and so on to do work. So I talk with some that are based in China that work with both companies that are sort of hybrid, both Chinese and US based. And they tell me that a lot of their customers have slowed down. So instead of maybe doing a year contract for 2025, it's now on a project by project basis awaiting funding. Now, where I want to swing a little bit, and I'm not going to monopolize all the time on this, but in China, I think it's a slightly different one. I think a lot of Stefan's data has been based on the US and the EU. But China is a bit different. They did the 14th 5-year plan. That was back in 2021. It's going to finish this year. Basically said they want to be self-sufficient in the pharmaceutical business, essentially. You can bet that the 15th year 5-year plan is going to have the same, wording. So China is on a continued growth trajectory. I'm going to stop here, but later on I can bring you back some statistics about how well the Chinese pharmatech or biotech business is doing. But I do think it's going to be a tremendous upward swing in terms of investment, at least in China. Ukichi. Deb.
So although, as you mentioned, if you have a good data and you can demonstrate it, then there's a good chance you might be able to get it funded. I have seen situations, even recently, where a company was given like $100 million just because the client had a good business plan and a good idea to fund a research program. So there are these outliers. The other thing that I see are clients that have programs that are in early discovery research phase, and then big pharma will swoop down and enter into like a strategic collaboration to help fund a lot of the work. So although a lot of it is dependent on what the investor community is providing for the R&D efforts, there is another whole component of this where one may be able to find money through the R&D collaborations with the big pharma. So I just throw some additional sources of funding that could be possible outside of the investment community.
I'll jump in just on the one point that Deborah made, is that there's 4 companies I know of that were funded $400 million. There's always exactly $400 million for a business plan. The one commonality is each and every one of those CEOs had sold a company for in excess of $1 billion the prior year.
The same company, different company.
They're all 4 different companies, different people. Yeah.
I would do that.
So, Jim, what was your question? It's related to the funding
Well, I didn't-
trends. Speak to the trends regarding these small companies and the challenges.
Well,
I mean, there's so many facets here. I'll focus on what I see. These small companies. There is, well, we all know the limited funding, but we're seeing the trickle down from the different areas. I wanted to speak about the new the orphan drug thing. Are you familiar with this? I wanted to bring that up. I want to see what we think that's going to change, because I might just learned about that. But what we're seeing also is the larger deals, but less of them. And we also know that this might be obvious, but that these companies, we call them biotechs, but the emerging pharma, it's all a pipeline for the big pharma. And the whole plan it's all exit strategy. There's very few people that I know that this is their baby drug. They're going to take it all the way. Yes, that is the exception. There is some, like you were mentioning, exceptions. However, this is all a big exit strategy, just like I experienced in the 2000s. I mean, I was entrepreneurs, just one after the other. We just wanted to get out and make our money. I mean, it is detrimental when there's a delay, to your point, Jim. It needs to be fast. It's all about time. It's not always about the supply. There could be a batch failure. Just get on it. Does that answer your question, Jim?
I think that just to both your points. So Debbie, from your perspective, this whole day in different ways of doing it, I'll say. But I've noticed that the CMOs are reacting. They're looking at how do we get this business? How do we finance the business? Because realistically, in my experience, if I can get in as a CMO, and I come from the CMO piece, if I can get in at phase 1, I'm there for life. I'm not going to be out of that drug when it gets commercial. And maybe more important, to your point too, when big pharma comes in, very rarely have I seen big pharma change those suppliers. So you get in at phase 1, you're in for life. The big pharmas don't want to make the changes. First of all, I hate to say it, in many cases, there wasn't a drug invented there. You got all your clinical data done. You got all of your processing done, all of your approvals done. So why make a change? You've got 3 or 4 years to make a lot of money by the time it's approved, before it goes generic. And the generics are working on the drugs before they're even approved nowadays. So that wind is limited, and it's in and out very, very quickly in that respect. But a couple of the CMOs that I'm working with right now, their idea was, okay, they're not funding it per se, but what they are doing is saying, okay, we will do it for less money. We will do it for a supply agreement. You give me 50% of your business if you make it, and we'll cut our rates down. So your $1 million may now be the equivalent of $2 million because I'm getting free services at the end of the day.
Can I speak to that issue?
Everybody's making the adjustments, so it's not just the market's making them. You know, we have to do it on our side to get the business to go forward and be able to do these types of things.
These are great points. I could speak to that forever. These are long-term partnerships. That's a big shift that if we want to speak about CDMOs and the sponsors and the incubators, that I'll call them incubators now, the emerging pharma companies and the big companies, I mean, they all know each other, and it's a big partnership now. It's not, we don't even say client. A lot of times I'm a proponent of that because it's all about de-risking that. That's a big point. Like I said about the batch failures, what I mean is it's a partnership. Things happen. The discussion is, I mean, it's an extension of each other, and it's all about investment. Where is your investment going? It's not client relationship. It's
So as a
not a
consultant,
transaction.
my job is to work on the API and the dosage. But I'll end up almost 20%, 30% of my time helping them put their decks together. You know, putting information together to support their thing. And I think a lot of the consultants now, that's what we're doing in that regards, because we want to get it done. We have information and key points that we think we can use as drivers. I mean, I was on the phone this morning, and I've got one being done, and their description that's going to go into their deck, I said, well, wait a minute, you're missing an important part. You had phase 2 clinical data, which I rarely get to see, and I've got a process that's commercialized. I said, so the investor has to know that now that risk has been diminished significantly because I got good data and I got a process that I can take forward. So that timeline to get to the larger quantities is going to be short because I'm already commercial. You know, and that's not a common position that I'm in. I think the other point that you're making too is how many large pharmaceuticals have funds? Lilly has a fund, Merck has a fund. You know, and what are they? They're really opportunities for big pharma to look at product lines. Because most of the drugs that we're launching come from the little guys, not the big guys. So
But
that is the pipeline.
There's a criticism, and that's why it's good for discussion, because I don't know the answer. I'll moderate about the orphan drug, that new thing. Because so what do you guys think about that? Because they're saying that it favors big pharma. I don't know enough detail.
You know,
Or what? An audience
So
member?
I don't know if people have been following, but there is a new voucher program that's being tested right now, which is a little scary. It's very different. It has a pricing component. So to get the voucher, you're going to have to price MFA. So you're going to have to price very cheap here in America versus where else you're going overseas. It's very restrictive. It can't be sold, has to be kept by the company. So that favors big pharma right away.
Yep.
Means if you're an orphan drug company, yeah, there are a few of them out there that are probably big enough to launch more than one drug. But from that standpoint, very few
Yeah.
outside of big pharma.
Well, to add to that, what that means is if you were an emerging company with your $1 million seed investment or such, you're not going to be able to get to any clinical data without using a U.S. company, just because
it's going to hurt our development.
it's just not going to happen because of costs.
The one thing I do want to point out recently, though, is that there is a change in the market where back in the 2010s, I was able to make a lot of money with a very simple investment strategy, short the launch. Can't do that anymore. Companies that are actually marketing their own drugs now, Lens Therapeutics, right, just got the approval for presbyopia. Tarsus, one of my clients, doing great fighting mites in our eyes. I was on the IPO for Moderna. They've become huge, obviously, as well.
Did you say
So
client?
there's a number of these guys that have grown and grown and grown, and at the same time are launching their own drugs. And I think that's becoming more of a theme because Wall Street, instead of running away, is now funding them and saying, you know what, we will fund your launch.
So there's a comment in the
Yeah.
front here. He's writing.
Question?
Yeah.
Go closer to your. Go closer.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go closer to your mic.
I have interesting, I guess, quick question. I hear discussing, I guess, the idea of commercializing and getting this to the market as fast as possible, I guess, to capitalize on your investment. But how important, I guess, are the regulatory pathways in this way? Because you can spend years getting the drug approved through the FDA
I mean,
Label is everything.
it's a time.
Yeah.
You have a limited amount of time that you can make all the money.
Mm.
So you have to use that patent part, I'll call it, and that approval, that your exclusivities. Once you lose exclusivity, the numbers that I've seen is the day the first generic is launched, the price goes down 25%.
Dun, dun, dun,
And
inflation
on the
reduction.
180 day, on 181 day, your price goes down to 25% of the original, and you could lose easily 80% of your market share. So I need as much time, because that's the only way a lot of these companies are going to have money to go back and invest. You're not going to invest in a market, pharmaceutical, whatever, if the returns aren't there, at some point. So it's about money. I mean, the one movie, follow the money. Always follow the money, and you will be successful at the end of the day.
I mean, I would agree with that. It's all about velocity, particularly biotechs. The guys have raised money. You've got to burn cash and get to that key clinical. And you're going to either succeed fast or fail fast, particularly if it's a fail fast. You need to have that data. That's why the science, the underpinning. It is a race, and Jim's absolutely right. The minute it goes generic, all bets are off. So make as much money as you can, as quickly as you can.
So I would imagine in this kind of scenario, you would need to get approvals from the regulatory agencies pretty much as prompt as possible, so that you can get your trial.
100%. Everything has to be aimed around the key clinical endpoint. Get everything aligned, people, data, science, materials, engaging with the regulators from the get-go to give yourself the maximum chance of success.
Yeah, and if you look at the regulatory groups, I mean, they're not working in a vacuum. They're open for discussions. I work on the chemistry side of it, if you will, but, if we've got a question, go through, they want good data. They don't want to be looking at stuff that's garbage, and they've just wasted their time. So if you present good data, well organized, properly done, your approvals are going to get reviewed. They're going to move through the pipelines a lot faster. You're going to have a better relationship with the agency, so you can talk to them, and you get the feedback. All that leads to an approval. And at the end of the day, it's about approvals. We've said it a dozen times, and if you want to look at a room, if you want to see what you're doing and know what at the end of this meeting, just remember, the drug has to be approved. That's the key driver. More approvals.
Can I challenge that?
Yeah,
Roger.
Roger's got a
I would
question.
challenge it only just the point of, yes, it is about approval, but it's also about risk on their investment.
Oh, well, to me, they're
To-
the same.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
But
I think Roger's got a question.
Can I jump in on the regulatory front really quickly, though? The one thing to answer your question, which is very important, the FDA is changing. So you don't just get approved now anymore. We have client after client. They're going to the FDA, and at the last minute, they're seeing, even though everything's been agreed upon for a year, they're changing the requirements. And that's led to delays, and delays meaning go run a new trial. I mean, guidance changing. So it's actually killing one of the drugs for one of our, they just don't have the money to go out and do a head-to-head trial against a drug, by the way, that technically they enroll patients who are refractory to the drug, but the FDA now says they want a head-to-head trial. Who's going to go into that trial? How am I going to enroll patients in a trial when you have to be refractory to drug A, but you could wind up with that drug A as part of the trial? It's not going to happen. They basically killed it. What's happening in the vaccine area, so I know most people here don't deal with vaccines, is amazing. We've just seen one of the vaccine committee members who disagreed with our one of the Trump administration appointees, Kennedy, who should have remain nameless, get fired from the vaccine committee. Gone. Everything's changing. We're about to see whole new guidelines come out there. Our clients are having trouble scheduling meetings. They're getting delayed. People are leaving the FDA in droves, so they just don't have the manpower to hold the meeting that was under the statutory 30 days after being requested, or 60 days, so things are getting delayed. So rules are changing, things are getting delayed. There's just some flux there. It's getting better, okay? So we have seen some semblance of normalcy, starting to return. But this is the problem we're having now, and that's one of the reasons why the market was off when Trump won, because they figured this was going to happen.
So I would, go ahead.
Sorry about that, quick follow-up. that is, you have, like you said, absolutely, that we believe that FDA may request additional data, or like you said, as extreme as finding a whole new trial. But also recently, I saw they put out the whole guidance on using AI for clinical studies as well. And that may kind of accelerate the idea of clinical studies. So this kind of two streams. working
Yeah,
at the
but
same time.
there's a
One is
lag
AI,
to when
one is
AI, yeah.
accelerating.
People have been using machine learning for trials for a long time, and there's a lag for us to see any huge benefit. We're seeing the disruption at the FDA happen now. So our consultants, we have a couple FDA consultants who came out of the FDA very recently, as recently as like a month and a half ago, who are telling us very negative feedback about what's going on. Now, it's division by division, by the way, so not every division is impacted the same.
So I'd like to just let Roger get his question in, and then I'll follow up with a comment to one of your observations, Stefan. So Roger, go ahead.
Thanks, Matt. So Stephen, maybe we can expand, or you can expand, and the rest of the panel can expand on a topic that you made a little bit earlier on the IRA Act, and Molly talked about drugs in the context of investments in NPD. If you can end up, if you think the regulatory stability is adequate now to do a decent enough estimates on NPD combination, that's kind of the key to a lot of the orphan drug valuations, because not only cancer, but infectious
Yeah.
Ooh.
as
I
well.
want to add
It's
something
a
to that.
requirement to be able to figure out what is the pricing going to be, string this together, okay, the initial population's less than 250,000. You put four of those together, you're over. What is the government's position going to be on pricing? Is it the most favored nation of that drug combination across all of it? And then that kind of comes back to the investment. Do you do 2 kilos, Jim, or 10 kilos to get clinical studies started? Or do you need to develop a new modality because you can't use that molecule in that number of indications, even though it's perfectly fine and you're not doing a fixed dose combination co-administration. So I know there's a lot of pieces to that, but it kind of all comes back to the investment and how FDA is going to look at that. Because how do you price that in? How do you raise capital? How many deals
Right.
do you make?
With IRA, you start the clock right away. So that's why pharma is no longer saying, let's go after the orphan indication first as the foothold, let's go after the big one now. So that's changing the way that they're interacting. Biotech is starting to think that way as well. The only issue is biotech is let's just get something to market fast as possible. So there's this dichotomy about how that's working. I think as we go forward, the FDA is going to do something very simple. The minute you open up a market that's larger, two things happen. Number one, you can't charge an orphan price anymore because it won't sell in the other market. You'll just have spillover. You have to come out with a new formulation, a brand new drug, which won't trigger that. But if you do and open up the wider market, your coverage is gone. It's done.
So you think the current exceptions are likely,
To go away.
laws won't put it in place.
Right.
I think
String them together as long as one individual doesn't go over the threshold. Because you're saying the regulatory stability there may not be good enough to bank on.
100%. There's a lot of risk there.
I'm really excited to add this. That's why I was like, I think, well, a very, very favorable investment is the pipelines that have one molecule and then it's very, very slightly modified, multiple indications. Is this pretty much your point? Where I mean, it's an add-on to that. That this is what we're seeing a huge trend. Yes.
But even with orphan drugs, they still get fast track approval, don't they? Or am I off on there? And then with the IRA, my concern still is the penalty on small molecule, which is affected by the patent life and what they're doing. And I would like more clarity on the voucher to see, I mean, is that more headwind against small molecule?
If that small molecule had multiple indications and you were developing it, it would be the same. You could think of it as similar cost, or I mean less cost, but you're developing it for other indications that would not be under that umbrella. Does that make sense what I'm saying? It'd be a good strategy that way. The voucher for the one, then you have these others.
paying less.
He'd be developing that molecule,
Right.
that synthetic route, all of that up front, but the voucher for the one, that would be in tandem. That's a good investment. Does that make sense to you?
It does
Can you
make
expand on
sense.
that? Okay.
Yeah, just in terms of getting a voucher for a molecule, making an alteration, and then that opens up bigger markets.
Right, and
And
that's
lets
a
you
good-
keep the voucher, yeah.
Yes, and this is, okay,
makes
did I just give away my investment strategy for free? Okay, whoops.
So the other thing on the small molecule penalty, let me make a prediction for you guys. Number one is it's going to go away. And the investment
That's true.
in pharma is showing that. Investment by investors is showing that because they're not running away from small molecules for two reasons. Number one, they're better, they're cheaper, easier to take. Until we have antibodies that can reliably be taken in a pill and are cheaper to produce, but there are certain advantages that small molecule drugs have for certain situations as well. So that's going to go away. It's a whole topic on why we got here, which we're not going to talk about. Small molecule, I actually include peptides as well in the small molecule, but it's typically anything that's below about 800. Yeah. So if you're a biologist, it's a Dalton. So, yeah.
So I want to go back to the question that was raised earlier about modalities. You touched based on indications, but you didn't really talk about modalities. I'm just curious, maybe it is in your presentation. Do you see any trends with platform-based discovery, research, and heavy investment in that? Because that's what I see by talking to a lot of biotechs and startups. They seem to do well as far as funding if they have this magic, platform-based technology and of course AI, ML. So I just want to
comment on that.
from your perspective, but whoever else wants to
I can
pitch in on
comment.
that.
I can comment.
Platform was a dirty word until last year.
Yeah,
Again,
I can
it was
comment.
great, then it was bad, and as of late last year, people want platforms again. AI is a totally separate monster. So let's exclude AI because yes, it's a platform. People are excited about AI, but it's because it's a bubble at this point.
I can comment. What I see a big trend, especially where I'm in the Northwest Seattle area and also in California, that there's a lot of companies that we consider biotech, the true biotech. They have a platform that is there to attract the investment, and they also have a molecule. And it's buried, and that's for the exit strategy once they get the investment in their platform. Very, very common.
All platform companies eventually become product companies, though. That's over
Exactly.
history, unless they
That's
get
my
bought
point.
early for the
It-
platform.
I don't see very many platform-only companies,
Yeah.
is my point.
I guess my question was, do you see more investments coming into those companies?
100% it's happening this year, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But eventually they will come more, I hope.
Mhm.
I have a question for Stefan, and that is, across the board, all the biotechs and emerging pharmas, how many of those, or what percent actually take their products all the way through to commercialization versus actually being bought by a big
It's
pharma?
less than 10%. It's probably less than 5%.
Less than
We
5%
actually
take
did
it all
this
the way through to
number,
commercial.
Yeah,
So
very, very few.
this is a terrible philosophy, but I think for a lot of the biotechs, it's all about getting acquired. And you can get acquired for billions of dollars, even if you're in phase 2. Lilly made an acquisition not too terribly long ago, and it was mind-boggling. So yes, you definitely want to develop a drug so it gets approved. But I think the end game for the biotechs is getting it far enough along and having a great story to tell with some good data that you can be acquired and
You,
not have
you
to
said, I
worry
mean,
about-
that's a key. Out licensing
yeah.
or selling the
Yeah.
business. It's
Right.
realizing the value, enhancing the valuation prospect of the biotech.
having a good story.
The opening comment was made, which is the very important comment, and that's the real currency in this business are data. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the inflection, excuse me, that is,
Yeah.
and I'll actually hit that as well, is the clinical data, right?
Right.
Where you're really gonna realize the value of the asset. And then as biotechs grow, it's a whole different cultural shift and integration to build a commercial enterprise.
That's right. That's it.
Yeah. Just to follow up on that point, Roger, because a lot of us have been in the industry for a long time, and it's incredibly hard to like build from scratch, you know, another pharmaceutical company. Now there are examples, but not that many. And you know, the big ones, you know, the ones who are truly successful, you get the right data, as you say, we've all talked about that. You get the value of the asset, and then you get big pharma to buy you out, and you go do another one. You know, and some of those guys are pretty good at being a serial entrepreneur and building up biotech companies.
Like the 400 million.
Or just an idea.
There was a question. over
Retire.
On that side.
That's all I have to say.
Investment is coming in. I think the small molecule area is going to be honestly just as hot as it has been in the past. Obviously, there are new technologies that have come out in the biologics, great. I think those have gone as far as they're going to go till we see something new. That's number one. Gene therapy has turned out to be not as exciting, I think, as has cell therapy. There's not a lot of investment going in there, although we did see a gene therapy company that was a $10 million company. We were on a deal 2 weeks ago, raising them $100 million. People just got excited. I don't actually know why the investors who approached us got excited, to be honest, but they did. But from that standpoint, I think there's a future as technology gets better. I think AI's biggest impact is not going to be necessarily in the biologic area. I think it's going to be in the small molecule area. It's going to take time, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
But I think we see the benefit first, and so things will get better, stronger, faster, cheaper, however you want to say it, to some extent. And so I think there's a big future on small molecules.
So
Again,
I just,
easier to formulate in a pill. Who doesn't want a pill versus a shot?
right, so I'll just follow up on that because, you know, I've been in China for about 15 years now, and I think you still see a hell of a lot of small molecules that go before the NMPA, which is the equivalent of the FDA in China. And I think also if you look at big pharma in the US, okay, there was a trend maybe 10, 20 years ago, oh, we're going to go into biologicals, you know, biosimilars, et cetera, but now it's sort of balanced out. So you see a lot of big pharma, if you look at their portfolio, it's not all biologicals, it's also a fair hefty amount of small molecules. And to Stefan's point, you know, taking a pill is a lot easier than going in for an IV, unless you're in China, because there people are used to taking IVs, so they don't mind. Probably
Or
that's
France, for that matter.
or
But
France,
that's a
yeah.
different.
But those are sort of different outliers, you know, out there compared to a lot of other
Right.
countries.
Not when you're.
I mean, I can tell you
rural.
from a Pharmaron perspective, we are seeing a massive growth in numbers of phase 1 small molecules we're handling. Last year over 850, this year over 1,000. That's not going away. And about 20 years ago, I do remember as a small molecule guy thinking, am I dead in the water? Biologics, I was told by the biologics guys, you're a dinosaur. And here we are. And it's not one or the other. Biologics and small molecules in combination, like CAR T treatments, et cetera, we've seen those. So it's, you know, ironically, neither is going away. The industry evolves, modalities evolve tremendously. You know,
I include peptides, and so do investors frequently. I know that production people don't always include peptides.
yeah.
And there is a peptide shortage of production right now. I currently was just on a trip to Puerto Rico. We're looking with investors funding us to buy a plant. By the way, I would not recommend going to Puerto Rico looking at plants right now, but that's a different story. A lot of black mold, I'll just tell you that. But besides that, there is interest in that area. And there's only a certain window for that because people are already in process, and it's because of all the weight loss drugs. But we're about to have small molecule weight loss drugs. So they're going to start taking away the need for the massive peptide production as well. But that's...
Let's get Jeff his question because he's been desperate.
He commented two possible headwinds. Pharma is like racing to China right now, buying up biotech assets.
Yep.
It's gone from zero to probably a third of all the money that's being spent.
It's a little more, but yeah.
So what does that mean for U.S. biotechs, right?
Mhm.
The money that we lose or otherwise? And the second thing is cutbacks in the NIH, et cetera, and what that means
Yeah.
5 years out or longer in terms of the innovation engine, and how are we going to backfill that?
Two things. First off, we ran a survey of BD folks at Big Pharma. This is about a month ago. And what they came back with is 35% of their current in-licensing is coming from China. They expect that, in terms of what they're looking at, is 40 to 45. So that's where the puck is going, I guess, to use a sports analogy. The one comment that they came back with, and I know you'll have a further comment, is that they believe that these are me-betters, meaning they're real opportunities, but there's not a lot of innovation on the targets that they're going after. One of the issues is this: we educate the vast majority of senior scientists in China right now, meaning a lot of them come to the United States. Just talking with, I don't know if any of you know the name Barry Sharpless, two-time Nobel Prize winner. I was out to dinner with him on Thursday last week, and he was saying because of these cutbacks, he's taken Chinese students in droves because they're all paid for. They come over here, everything's paid for, so the vast majority of his group now is from China. So we're educating top scientists going overseas. It is a potential catastrophe, I think, for us, what's been going on. The other issue is that the projects now are getting determined by politicians versus by scientists, which is very scary. I don't know, with the direction of politics, that we're going to see a change in this philosophy for the next 6 years. So until the Democrats get their act together, because they're not, and the Republicans are in a rut right now, they're not getting their act together, because anything that looks successful, you're going to continue with. So from that standpoint, I think we have an issue. The problem is that the damage that's being done today, and I really mean damage, because I've talked to a number of postdocs who have had their positions canceled over the last month because of financing issues. Where they're going to go, what are they going to do? They now have to try to get into industry, but guess what? There's not a lot of jobs in industry either. So we're losing that advantage. That takes a decade to recover from 3 or 4 years of downside.
So I can follow
I wish I
up.
had an answer.
So we'll take one
Right.
more question.
So can I just follow up a bit
Just
about
quickly.
this China thing? So I think, Stefan, you're right in that there's a lot of those Me Too's, but there are also specific areas that China is sort of taking the lead in from the U.S. So depending on who you look to and so on, but I think the areas would be biospecific antibodies, ADCs. China's really gone forward to that, and also chimeric antigen receptor T cells. But I think what's going on in China now is that the government, because of their 5-year plans, tons of money, they vet the people coming back, Chinese educated, who get educated in the U.S., have built maybe 10, 15 years experience in big pharma. They bring them back to China. They're given tons of money, prestigious titles, and all sorts of lab infrastructure and so on. And the other thing that drives China, which is interesting, we talk about clinical trials, but in China, you can get a clinical trial going 2 to 3 times faster than you can in the U.S. Enrollment of patients is not a problem. Now, the issue, though, is that this is all really driven for the Chinese market. So, but eventually China recognizes, and the leadership has recognized that if we're good enough to be worldwide, then we can take over that market also. So it'd be interesting to see what happens, particularly with this brain drain. I guess I would call it a reverse brain drain that goes on, because it's not just going back to China, but also people are leaving the U.S. to go to Europe, for example. So Paul had pointed out, like in the recent CNE news article, there was about a case of about a woman. She wanted to do a PhD, and she found out she had to go to Europe to get it done, because that's where she could get the funding. So how the U.S. recovers from this, I don't know, because if you look around, a lot of the people who have driven the pharmaceutical renaissance in the U.S. are foreigners. They came over as immigrants. They're not native-born Americans generally. And how you rectify that, I have no idea, but I do agree, Stefan, this is going to be
Let
a
me
tough
give
sell.
you some further bad news. So I'm on the board of the UC Berkeley. Okay, here we go again, Debbie Downer. I'm on the board of the UC Berkeley Physical Sciences Division. And we had to warn our foreign students, do not leave the country, because we had cases where our students, even though they had valid visas, were delayed or actually not able to get back once they went home and tried for a holiday and then come back. So this needs to be rectified, and at some point, unfortunately, we have to think about specifically. And by the way, the UK is having a similar problem right now. they've altered their visa issues, their immigration issues that are going on right now, and it's pretty severe, worse than ours. The way that they've decided to correct the numbers of immigrants is by getting rid of the special visas given to students and to highly qualified individuals. That's happened already. So my daughter's on that program. So she's an epidemiologist, and she has a job in London. And she's already been told, guess what? Your special visa, that's going away. So you need to get another visa, which, by the way, they raised the cost for those people. They doubled it, and they now put a tax on any company that wants to keep those specialized people in the country. So if she just shows up at the border and says, I'm here, I'm a refugee, she can not political here, she can get a job. But if you're highly qualified and you show up with a PhD, you can't going forward. So they're in trouble too. The continent and the EU are doing much better with this.
So I hate to do this, but
Yeah.
it is courtesy of the time for everyone that's here and everything else.
You guys, awesome.
I want to thank the panel. I think you guys did a great job. I'd like to thank the audience. You were very good.